Let me tell you something I learned early on about the journey to wealth. Big goals without small timelines usually stay in the clouds. Most people set a goal for someday. Someday I'll be debt-free. Someday I'll make six figures. Someday I'll own a business. And you know what happens to most of those goals? They collect dust in the attic of the mind. Why? Because someday is not a date on the calendar, it's an illusion. What turns someday into reality is a deadline, and more importantly, a short one. That's why I always preferred to think in quarters, not years. Quarters, 90 days, 3 months. Just enough time to achieve something meaningful, but not so long that you forget what you're working for. Setting quarterly financial milestones is one of the most powerful habits you can adopt if you want to stop drifting and start building. I remember when I was trying to rebuild my financial life. I had debts, no real assets, and just a few people who believed in me. If I had tried to tackle the whole thing at once, it would have crushed me. So I said, let me just win this quarter. I picked one goal, save $1,000 in 90 days. That's it. Not save the world, just save 1,000. So I cut out the little expenses, the fast food, the random gadgets, the extra television subscriptions. I picked up one side gig. I sold a few things I didn't need. I tracked every dollar, and I hit that goal. Not because I had more money, but because I had more clarity. Here's the secret. When the target is close and specific, your brain wakes up. It starts seeing opportunities. You begin to work with purpose, not just hope. And that changes your energy. You go from overwhelmed to focused. And when that first goal is hit, something inside you says, what else can I do? So the next quarter, I set a new goal pay off a credit card. Then the next start, a side hustle that made $500 a month. Quarter after quarter, those little goals stacked like bricks. And over time, I built a wall between me and my old life. Here's how you do it. At the start of every quarter, January, April, July, October, sit down and choose one major financial milestone. Don't choose 10. Don't overwhelm yourself. Just one. Maybe this quarter it's saving your first $1,000 proper. Maybe it's paying off one specific debt. Maybe it's creating a product or launching a service. Maybe it's finally investing in a course that teaches you a money-making skill. Whatever it is, write it down, then break it into weekly actions. If your goal is to save $1,000 in 3 months, that's about $84 a week. Suddenly, it's not a dream. It's math. And math is something you can measure. Now, post that goal somewhere visible. On your fridge, your mirror, your desk. Let it stare back at you daily. Every Friday, review your week. Did you save your $84? Did you hit your weekly income target? Did you follow through on what you promised yourself? That kind of reflection builds trust not with others, but with yourself. And when you trust yourself, you do more. You start to see your financial life not as something that happens to you, but something you're actively building. Some quarters will go better than others. That's okay. What matters is the rhythm. Wealth is not an event, it's a process. And quarterly goals give you the structure to stay in the game. They keep you from waiting until the 31st of December to wake up and realize nothing changed. And here's the beauty of it. You don't need perfect conditions to start. You don't need a financial advisor or a big inheritance. All you need is a decision. One goal, one quarter, one win, and then another. Let the world chase shiny objects. You chase your 90-day milestone. Stay focused on the next small hill. Climb it, then look up. There will be another and another. And before you know it, you'll be standing on a mountain you built yourself. So start this quarter strong. Don't wait. Choose your target, put it in writing, break it down, and go after it with everything you've got. Because success doesn't respond to someday. It responds to schedule. One of the great battles in the world of wealth building is fought inside our emotions. That quiet war between reason and impulse, between desire and discipline, is where fortunes are kept or lost. You see, money doesn't disappear, it moves. And most of the time it moves when emotions are driving the decision instead of wisdom. I learned this early in life. I remember standing in a store one day. staring at a shiny new gadget. It wasn't something I needed. It wasn't even something I had planned to buy, but it called to me. You've worked hard, it said. Treat yourself. And for a moment I believed it, until I remembered a principle a mentor once taught me, the 24-hour rule. What's the 24-hour rule? Simple. If you're about to buy something that costs more than a certain amount, $100, $500, $1,000, whatever threshold, you wait 24 hours before making the purchase. That's it. Just wait. Let time do what it does best. Clear your head and cool your emotions. Give logic and purpose a chance to enter the conversation. Because here's what I discovered. Most emotional spending fades when the emotion does. You see, the poor make financial decisions based on how they feel in the moment. The rich, they build a system that protects them from their feelings. Wealthy people don't let their impulses drive the car. They put them in the back seat and let principles take the wheel. Let me give you a practical example. A young entrepreneur I once coached told me he was always broke at the end of the month, even though he was earning well. I asked him to track every dollar for 30 days. You know what he found? Almost $800 gone to emotional purchases, fast food, clothes, online gadgets, late-night Amazon sprees. I told him, it's not that you don't make enough, it's that your emotions spend more than your mind earns. So, we introduced the 24-hour rule into his life. If he wanted something, especially something that wasn't planned, he had to wait. In those 24 hours, he would ask himself, do I need this? Will it increase in value or decrease? Is this a tool or a toy? And suddenly, his bank account started growing. Not because he worked harder, but because he thought better. Emotional spending is often a cover-up. We buy to feel better, we spend to escape, we shop to reward ourselves. But wealth doesn't respond to reward systems based on emotion. It responds to structure, clarity, and long-term thinking. Every dollar you spend emotionally is a dollar that could have been invested intentionally. Now, I'm not against enjoying your money. I believe in celebration. I believe in treating yourself. But it should be planned celebration, not panic buying. Purposeful spending, not unconscious consumption. If you want the reward, earn it through discipline, not desire. Here's another layer. Emotions don't just cost you money, they cost you peace. Regret is expensive. Buyer's remorse is heavy. The guilt of spending what you shouldn't have becomes a weight on your shoulders. But when you wait, when you pause, when you think suddenly, your choices begin to align with your goals. Your money becomes a reflection of your vision, not your mood. That's when wealth begins to build, not just financially, but mentally. You start to feel in control. You start to make decisions with confidence. You start to look at your bank account and say, that's me, I did that. Not by luck, not by accident, but by design. Remember, no one builds wealth with an open emotional faucet. You've got to tighten the valve. Create a delay between desire and decision. The poor chase pleasure, the rich pursue purpose. And it all begins with one small habit. Wait 24 hours. So next time you're about to swipe the card, click the button, or hand over the cash pause. Give it one day. Let your future self weigh in on the decision. Because that small delay, that's the difference between spending like a consumer and thinking like a creator. And when you build your wealth from discipline, you don't just enjoy what you buy, you respect it. And that respect becomes your foundation for more. One of the most dangerous traps on the path to wealth is not poverty, it's prosperity misunderstood. It's when your income goes up and so do your appetite. Suddenly you're earning more, but keeping less. And eventually you wonder, why does it still feel tight even though I'm making more money than I ever have? That's the lifestyle trap. It creeps in quietly, but it robs you loudly. Now let me tell you something I've learned. More money doesn't solve money problems, better habits do. If you don't change the way you think about money, even more of it won't make you wealthy. In fact, it might make you more reckless. I've seen people triple their income and still live paycheck to paycheck because every raise became a new bill. Every bonus became a bigger car. Every promotion meant a more expensive apartment. That's not wealth, that's camouflage. That's financial stress in a nicer suit. Years ago, I worked with a man who'd just gotten a big raise. His salary doubled overnight. You would think that would set him up for life. But the first thing he did was finance a luxury car, upgrade his wardrobe, and move into a high-end neighborhood. Within a year, he was under more pressure than before. Why? Because he increased his income, but also his commitments. He bought liabilities, not assets. He inflated his lifestyle instead of his investments. Let me share a better way. When your income goes up, don't spend it to sign it. Give your money a job. Don't let it wander around. Don't let it decide for itself. When you get a raise, act like you didn't. Take the difference and put it into something that will pay you later. Stocks, index funds, real estate, your own business, something that multiplies quietly in the background while your lifestyle stays steady. I've always said, grow your assets, not your appetites. Don't reward yourself too quickly. Wealth is not built by how much you make, but by how much you keep and grow. Imagine this. If every time your income went up, your lifestyle stayed the same for just one more year, and you invested the difference, what would your life look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? You'd have choices. You'd have freedom. That's real wealth. I used to live by what I called the 70-30th rule. Live on 70% of your income. Use 10% for saving, 10% for investing, and 10% for giving. That forces discipline. That protects you from the temptation of spending it all. Because here's the truth. You can't out-earn poor spending habits. You must out-discipline them. Lifestyle inflation is sneaky because it disguises itself as progress. But if your expenses rise as fast as your income, you've gained nothing except pressure. And here's the psychological Draper culture. Tells us that success looks like bigger things. Bigger house, better car, fancier watch. But wealth doesn't need to announce itself. In fact, true wealth is quiet, it's calm, it's confidence, in knowing that you're not trying to impress anyone because your money is working while you sleep. There's nothing wrong with nice things, by the way. I enjoy nice things, but I buy them with wisdom, not emotion. And I don't buy them to feel rich. I buy them after I've built real wealth. I call it deserved luxury. If you want the car, great, but first, buy the asset that pays for the car. That's when it's smart. That's when it's sustainable. So the next time your paycheck grows, let your investments grow too. Don't let your ego cash checks your discipline can't afford. Delay the urge to inflate your life. Because when you avoid the lifestyle trap, you stay in control. You don't just look rich, you become rich, quietly, steadily, intentionally. Remember, your goal is not to impress the world, it's to own your time, buy your freedom, and leave a legacy. And that starts by resisting the urge to upgrade your life before you upgrade your wealth. Let your money rise, let your future rise, but let your expenses sit still. That's how the wealthy win. If you want to change your life, change what you look at every day. Most people don't track their progress because they don't want to face it. But here's the truth. What you avoid controls you. What you measure, you master. And what you see consistently, you start to believe is possible. That's why I always taught build a scoreboard. Create something visual, something simple, something bold that reminds you where you're going. When I was first learning how to take control of my finances, I didn't have fancy software or a digital app. What I had was a pen, some paper, and a bulletin board on the wall. On that board, I wrote my savings goal for the year. Below it, I drew a simple progress bar like a thermometer. Every time I added a little money to savings, I colored in more of the bar. It sounds childish, but let me tell. You watching that line grow over time gave me more motivation than any paycheck could. It showed me that I was moving, even if slowly. Most people drift because they don't have a target in front of them. They have a vague desire to save more or get out of debt. But there's no picture, no scoreboard, no finish line. And if there's no line, there's no race. So they stop running. That's where visual tracking changes everything. When you put your financial goals in front of your eyes every day, your mind begins to cooperate. You start to notice opportunities to save a little here, invest a little there, earn a little extra over there. Why? Because your brain is hunting for what you've told it matters. Let me make it practical. Get a whiteboard. Hang it where you see it every morning. Write 3 key things on it: your savings goal, your debt reduction target, and 1 income goal. Keep it simple. Under each one, create a progress bar. Now here's the key. Update it manually. Don't automate this. Use your hand. There's something powerful about physically coloring in progress. It creates ownership. It builds a connection between effort and reward. And this works in every area. You want to read more? Track how many pages you read per day on your wall. Want to grow a side hustle? Draw a chart of income growth month by month. Want to pay off debt? List your debts from smallest to largest and cross them off as you go. Let yourself see progress. Not just feel it, see it. There's a reason companies use dashboards, scoreboards, and trackers. They work. Athletes use them. Businesses use them. Even pilots rely on gauges to fly the plane. So why wouldn't you use them to navigate your financial life? Don't leave your progress to chance. Build a system that feeds your focus. Now, some people will say, but it's just a chart. No, it's a commitment. That whiteboard becomes a contract between you and your future. Every time you walk past it, it whispers, stay with it. Don't give up. You're getting closer. And that's exactly the kind of reinforcement we need when the journey feels slow or uncertain. I once helped a young man who was deep in debt. He was frustrated, overwhelmed, and ready to give up. I told him to get a big poster board, write every debt down, and create a tracker for each one. He didn't want to do it, said it felt childish, but he did it anyway. A few weeks later, he called and said, something shifted. I paid off my smallest debt and got to cross it off. I've never felt so powerful. That's the magic. Progress builds momentum. And momentum is the fuel of consistency. If you're serious about building wealth, you need more than motivation. You need evidence, visual proof that your actions are making a difference. Don't rely on memory, on measurement. When your environment reflects your goals, your behavior starts to follow. So build that wall chart, track your growth, make it visible. Because when you can see the mountain shrinking or the bank account growing, you'll start moving faster with more belief, more confidence, and more discipline. Small wins seen daily become massive victories lived eventually. One of the most powerful truths I ever learned is this. You become the average of the people you spend the most time with. Not just in attitude, but in income, health, ambition, vocabulary, and even belief systems. And if that's true, and it is, then one of the wisest investments you'll ever make is building the right circle. A financial circle. A group of people who speak the language of growth, not gossip. Who talk opportunity, not excuses. Who challenge you to rise, not settle. Let me tell you, when I was broke, the people around me weren't talking about wealth. They were talking about the weather, the news, sports scores, and blaming the boss. It wasn't malicious, they just didn't know better. But here's the danger. When everyone around you is broke and complacent, you start to believe that's normal. You start to think ambition is selfish, or that budgeting is boring, or that wealth is reserved for someone else. So I had to step outside of that circle. Not because I thought I was better, but because I knew I wanted better. Now, I'm not talking about cutting people off with arrogance. I'm talking about adding people in with intention. You don't need a stadium full of supporters. You need a handful of financial allies. 2, maybe 5 people who are serious. Serious about saving, learning, investing, and growing. People who don't get awkward when you talk about money goals. People who push you to do the hard things. Because I'll tell you what discipline multiplies in the right environment and it dies in the wrong one. So here's what you do. Start simple. Look around you and find 1 or 2 people who are on the same path. Maybe they're trying to pay off debt. Maybe they're starting a business. Maybe they've just read the same book that inspired you. Reach out, schedule a weekly check-in. It doesn't have to be fancy, just consistent. Maybe it's 30 minutes on a Sunday night. You each share what you learned this week, what your next money goal is, and what challenges you faced. That little rhythm creates accountability, and accountability creates results. When I first started building my wealth circle, I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I didn't want to do it alone. So I met with one guy at a coffee shop every Thursday morning. We talked about side hustles, books, ideas, what to invest in, and where we were messing up. Some weeks we didn't feel like showing up, but we did anyway. And I can trace thousands of dollars in earnings and growth back to those little conversations. Why? Because every week we were sharpening each other. Iron sharpens iron. Eventually we added a third person, then a fourth. It never got big, but it got strong. And that strength carried over into our financial lives. When you're around others who are budgeting, investing, taking courses, reading biographies, building businesses, you start to do the same. Not because of pressure, but because of proximity. It feels natural. You want to grow. Now, you may be thinking, but I don't know anyone serious like that. Then go find them. They're out there at seminars and local business meetups, online communities, book clubs. Don't wait for the perfect person. Look for someone willing. The wealthy don't wait for luck. They build networks. They don't stumble into circles. They create them. And here's the thing. Your circle doesn't need to be made up of millionaires today. It needs to be made up of learners, doers, builders, people who are willing to trade short-term comfort for long-term reward. That's the energy that ignites consistency. One of the biggest lies poverty teaches is that you're alone. But that's not true. You're just not connected yet. So make the call, send the message, set the appointment, build the circle, because success is never just about what you know it's about, who reminds you to apply it. It's about who believes in you when you forget to believe in yourself. That's what a financial circle does. It elevates your standard, and eventually it elevates your life. So, choose your circle like your future depends on it, because it does. Debt is a double-edged sword. It can cut you or it can build you. And the way you hold it, the way you use it, makes all the difference. Most people don't have a debt problem. They have a decision problem. They use debt not as a tool, but as a trap. They use it to buy what impresses others instead of what improves their future. And if you misuse it long enough, debt becomes your master. It controls your thoughts, it limits your choices, and it steals your peace. But handled wisely, debt can become a servanta tool to help you build. Let me say this clearly. Never use debt to fund your appetite. Never borrow for consumption. Don't use a credit card to buy dinner you can't afford. Don't take out a loan for a vacation that vanishes in 7 days. That's how the poor use debt-fast pleasure, long regret. That kind of thinking leads to a lifetime of payments and a mountain of stress. I've seen people buy a car they can't afford just to look successful in a parking lot, while their bank account is empty and their future is mortgaged. That's not wealth. That's illusion. And illusions fade quickly under the weight of reality. But now let's shift the lens. What if debt could actually serve your vision if it was used with precision, discipline, and clear return? That's what the wealthy do. They don't fear debt, they direct it. They use it to buy things that grow. I'm talking about real estate that produces monthly cash flow. I'm talking about equipment that powers a profitable business. I'm talking about education that upgrades your skill set and makes you more valuable in the marketplace. When debt leads to growth, it becomes an investment, not a burden. I remember a time I had the opportunity to attend a seminar that could change the way I viewed money. But I didn't have the full cost on hand. I had two choices: miss it, or borrow wisely and commit to taking action. So I borrowed. But here's the key. I didn't just borrow money, I borrowed with a plan. I told myself, if you're going to spend this, you better squeeze every drop of wisdom out of it, apply it immediately, and turn it into a return. And I did. That one seminar helped me make decisions that produced thousands of dollars over time. The debt lasted a few months. The returns, they're still coming in. So here's how to know if debt is strategic or foolish. Ask this. Will this purchase create value over time? Will it generate income, skill, or opportunity? And just as important, do you have a plan to repay it? Not a wish, a real plan. If you can't see the return or you can't control the timeline, it's not strategic, it's sabotage. Even with real estate, be wise. I've seen people get excited and over-leverage themselves. Debt can magnify your wins, but it can also magnify your mistakes. That's why the first investment is not in the deal, it's in your mind. Invest in understanding the assets, study the numbers, know the risks. Debt is not an excuse to skip discipline. It's a reason to double it. I like to think of strategic debt like a bridge. If you use it right, it helps you cross over to a better position. But you must know where you're going, how long you'll be on the bridge, and what you'll bring back. If you start building bridges to nowhere borrowing with no plan, you'll find yourself surrounded by water with no way out. That's why I encourage people to write down their debt strategy. Not just how much you owe, but why you owe it. What did it buy you? What will it return? When will it be gone? If you can't answer those questions clearly, you're not managing debt, you're being managed by it. The goal is not to live without debt. The goal is to live with control. Some of the most powerful companies in the world operate with debt, but it's structured, productive, and purposeful. You can do the same in your personal economy if you treat it with that same level of respect. So don't fear debt, but don't trust it either. Use it like fire. It can warm your home or burn it down. It all depends on who's in control. And the one in control should always be you. Let me leave you with a final thought that may shape the next chapter of your life if you let it. Wealth is not something you stumble upon. It is something you deliberately build brick by brick, habit by habit, thought by thought. It's not a matter of luck, chance, or timing. It's a matter of discipline, clarity, and responsibility. The wealthy do not live differently by accident. They live differently on purpose. And the good news is, so can you. You may not control the economy. You may not control the government. You may not control the circumstances into which you were born. But you do control your habits. You control what you learn. You control your time. And if you begin to control those with precision, the external conditions begin to bend. Slowly at first, then suddenly. It starts with how you think. It starts with what you say to yourself when no one's watching. If you keep telling yourself, you're broke, you'll stay broke. If you begin to speak wealth into your day, not just in words, but in decisions, then the transformation has already begun. I urge you not to leave this message behind as something you just heard. Don't let inspiration become a substitute for action. Let inspiration ignite discipline. Let the word settle not in your ears, but in your calendar. Because your calendar is where wealth is built on intentional hour, one smart decision, one good habit at a time. Make this the day you set the first stone of your legacy. Not next week, not when it's convenient, today. Create your financial vision. Begin tracking your money. Invest in a book, a course, a skill. Start saving. Start creating. Start planning. Build something your children will thank you for, something your community can grow from, something your future self will be proud of. And don't keep this to yourself. Share what you've learned. Teach it. Model it. Let your wealth mindset be contagious. The greatest wealth isn't in the accumulation of money. It's in the multiplication of wisdom. And every time you apply what you've learned, you create a ripple. And those ripples, over time, can become a tide. You may have started with nothing, but that doesn't mean you have to end with nothing. You can begin where you are with what you have and change everything. But you've got to move. You've got to act. You've got to build. And most of all, you've got to believe not just in the process, but in yourself. Because if wealth is built one disciplined day at a time, then this day right now is your first brick. Lay it with intention.